Hey everyone, it's Tim Holtz, and today I want to take you through and show you how to assemble one of my new favorite dies from Sizzix, and this is called the Village Dwelling. And the Village Dwelling, this is a Biggs XL. It is a steel rule die, and what's really cool about this is it will build this three-dimensional structure, this dwelling. But what makes it even cooler is that there are a lot of other accessory dies that can transform the simple dwelling into other things. So let's talk about the die itself. The die is a Biggs XL, so it is a much longer steel rule die. So if you work with this, you are going to need the extended cutting pads if you plan on running everything through at one time. But I'll just give you a little secret. I use my standard cutting pads for this because when I cut out this die, I only cut out sections at a time. So for example, if I'm cutting out this section, I use a standard cutting pad, run it through. If I cut out this section, same thing, I move those down. So I don't really run everything through in one pass because as you'll see when I start showing you the setup, I cut out different sections of the dwelling out of different materials. So what does this end up assembling? Well, you saw the picture, but this is really what it is. It is a three-dimensional, cool little structure. Now, its finished height, if I was just going to measure just the dwelling itself from the bottom to the top, it goes to just about, I would say, maybe 3.5 inches to the pitch of the roof, maybe 4 inches to the top of the chimney, and width is about 3 inches. Over here, you've got about 2.25. So it's a pretty good sized dwelling. Now, it is designed to be kind of freeform, and it does come with this great base. That's part of the die that you can set this on. And the reason I didn't design this die to actually secure the dwelling to this is because maybe you wanted to set this on something else. Maybe you wanted to set it on kind of a tree stump or books or something like that, and you didn't necessarily need this. So I didn't want any funky tabs to kind of connect it. But more importantly, I wanted to be able to freely lift this up because the best part is, of course, you can illuminate these. A little battery operated tea light that you can put under there, and you can make all of the little windows and everything just kind of flicker and glow in there. So that is really what's important to understand, is these are designed as separate pieces. So let's go through and talk about how we put this together. So what the die cuts out is it's going to cut out several pieces, and I'll talk about the different surfaces as well. But we've got our base, and this is what the dwelling is going to sit on. It's going to consist of two kind of wall structures, and you'll see that one of the wall structures is going to have the front door, and of course it's got the windows, and then it's going to have the other side and the back wall. Then we have the rooftop. Then we have the dormer roof. This is the little part that sticks out from the front of the house. Then we have some other small pieces, and this is going to be the little front porch. So these are the posts for the front porch. This is going to be the base for the porch. We have a little chimney piece, and this is going to wrap around to create our chimney. And then we have an additional door, and the reason why I wanted to include this on the die is even though this part already has a door attached to it, usually we want the door a different color than the house itself. So I wanted to make sure that we included that bonus piece so you can always cut the door out of something else and make it easier for you to do that. So let's talk about the materials. Now, what's great about a steel rule die, as we know, is that it can cut thick things. It can cut things like chipboard and foam and plastic and fabric and all of those things. So let's just say, for argument's sake, you wanted to cut this out of chipboard, whether it was thin chipboard like this or even thicker chipboard. The challenge with this, even though, of course, as you can see, the die cuts it beautifully, even down to the windows, assembling this, because it has all of this crease rule for the tabs, it does make it a bit tricky. If you try to take chipboard and just fold it on a fold line, you can see that it usually wants to just rip. It doesn't want to follow that the same way paper does. So if you're insistent on cutting this out of chipboard, you would need to cut this out, and then I would suggest going in with a craft knife and going over all of your score lines with that blade just to kind of cut down a little bit. The knife will stay in the track, but if you glide over this a few times just to kind of cut through a few layers, it does make that fold easier. But of course that takes time. And quite honestly, it's not necessary. I don't cut these out of chipboard, and believe it or not, the structure stays fine. And here's really the trick to this. There are a lot of different papers, different cardstocks, different surfaces that we can use. There are ways that we can create kind of that sparkly. These are Ideology deco sheets. This is adhesive back vinyl if we wanted to create kind of a sparkly base. This is my craft core from Coordinations because I love the fact that when I sand this, it's going to give me a really great distressed finish on that paper. So I like to use different papers. And even though this is cardstock weight, to me, I will say that if you build it like this, it does make a little flimsy house. So here is the trick. You just want to get some index stock, and this is really inexpensive. You can buy this at any office supply store. It's just called index stock. It's about 110 pound weight. And this is a really great surface. And what I do is I end up adhering these two together. I like to use my Xyron, and I'll Xyron this together. And then I'll go in and cut out the sections of everything for my structure, just the structure. And what I mean by that is that would be the base. So there you can see the index card with deco sheet for my base. The actual walls of the dwelling. You can see there's my index card, and there is my craft core. And the two roof pieces, and that again, index card and craft core, because this makes the structure. These other elements, the small porch, the door, the chimney, this is not really part of the structure itself. So for those, I just use the cardstock or the paper. So this is just craft core. So I don't actually need this any thicker, and you'll see why when we assemble it. So that's really the trick. But of course, I'm just sharing the way I do it. You can do this however you wish. And I'm sure that the way I'm going to show it is probably different than the step outs on the packaging, because when you do get the die, it does come with step outs on assembly. So you can use that for guidance, but I just find it, I've made several of these and I've kind of found little shortcuts or tricks along the way. So let's get started. All right. Of course, after I cut this out, what I like to do is when I'm cutting on the die, like I said, I use the sections of the die. I'll usually go in with my ruler and measure out sections and say, okay, for my base, I'm gonna just kind of add a little bit. So maybe it's 4.5 by 4.5. So I know that my piece of index and deco sheet needs to be that size. So when I lay it here, I'm able to cut it out. So I do measure my sections that I need and lay those areas out and cut them through several passes. So I get all the pieces I want in the colors that I want. Of course, you can just do regular cardstock and then ink it or paint it any color later, but this is how I found just makes it so much easier. Then once everything's cut, I would go in and do any of the prep work. So for the craft core, I would just take my sanding grip and just go in and sand all of my pieces now. And that's going to, take out some of that color. Then I would go in with my distress and I would ink it. So I would do all of that kind of altering to these pieces before I assemble it. So that's the prep. But I'm not going to do that in the video because I've done so many sanding and inking videos. You can alter this however you want. This is about assembly. So here we go. I'm going to start with just kind of the base walls. And this index is going to fold no problem right on those tabs. I don't need to use a knife. I don't need to do anything. You can see it's got that nice score line. And another thing I don't do, oh my gosh, I'm sure Sizzix is going to kill me for saying this. I know that they recommend using a crease pad. It talks about using a crease pad for this. I find that if you're using this layer of cardstock, you don't need a crease pad. It will crease just fine. You can see that because of the thickness of the paper. I would imagine if you were using thinner papers for this, you would need a crease pad. Otherwise, the die might tear that. But if you're using these thick layers, I don't believe a crease pad is needed at all, just regular cutting pads. And you can see that all of those crease lines are just fine. So I go in and fold all of my stuff, even the door. The door I'm just going to kind of open a little bit, just give it a little bend. So I get everything ready, all of my tabs. And I'll do that to both of my outer wall pieces. It's really quite easy. Can you go in and use a bone folder or a creaser to crease all that? You can, but honestly, if you do this thick stock, it's really not necessary to do that. So I've got that as my outer walls. Let's talk about adhesives. You can use a lot of different kind of adhesives. I think, as crafters, we all have our favorite adhesives that we like. If it's small little pieces for paper, I like to use a quick dry adhesive. You can use glossy accents if you like. The downside of glossy accents for something like this is if you're a messy gluer like I am, you might end up with a lot of shine everywhere. So this one works for me on small pieces. But for the structure, I go for my glue gun. Love a hot glue gun. And this one's really cool. This is called a detailer glue gun. And what I like about this, it's got a very unique trigger. It's got an on and off switch. So it's not like a regular glue gun when you plug it in, it's just on and hot all the time. It's got that switch so I can turn it on and off. But it's the tip here. I love that it's got that little tiny metal tip. And then the rest of this is plastic. So I can get glue exactly where I want. That's and I just picked this up at the craft store. So it's a really simple one. It's by Surebonder and it's called Detail Glue Gun. That's what I like. So here's what we're going to do to put this together. Basically, these two walls are going to connect to make our structure. And it just has 2 side tabs. So on my first tab, I'm just going to go in with a little bit of glue, and I'm just going to drag it along the side. I'm not icing a cake or anything, so I just want to use the tip of the gun to kind of spread out that glue. I'm going to take this wall, lay it on that wall, and that's going to give me time to kind of line them up and press on the back. It's that simple. Then I'm going to go to my next tab, same thing, a little bit of hot glue, and I'm going to fold that around, kind of line that up, push that down, and any glue that comes off, hot glue, it's really not bad. You can just kind of spread that with your finger, take out the excess, and there we go. That's it. I mean, that's our structure. It's that simple. Done. And you can see it's super sturdy, durable, and that's just, again, index card layered with cardstock. So now we have all of these tabs, and these tabs are going to be for the roof and the dormer, the little piece that stick out. So we have our rooftop piece. I'm just going to go ahead and fold that, and you'll see that little notch. That notch is for this front piece, and I'll show you before I add any glue how it's going to fit. That notch just slides down over the front of this. It's going to go over those tabs, and it fits right around that little triangular piece. These tabs are for something completely different, so that's how that works. So I like to have all of my tabs folded because I'm going to put glue on these, and then I'm going to take this and I'm just going to kind of guide that in, and I'm going to glue one at a time. Now, if you're not comfortable with a glue gun for this step because you may want to maneuver it, maybe go with something that gives you a little bit more open time to move things around, but I'm just going to go in with my glue gun. So I already have my roof folded. Just take the glue gun, and I'm just putting a little bit of glue on the tabs. I'm not worrying about much, and I'm only using the front tabs right now. Then I'm going to take that piece. I'm just going to kind of slide it over that triangle. I want to get it kind of around those tabs. And once that's in there, I'm going to turn this over so I can make sure that I have a little bit of that roof edge over both sides. And I'm going to reach up inside, and I can press on those tabs now. It's really that easy. That's it. We are secure. So I have a little overhang, and it's not important to me that it's exactly even, as long as I have a little overhang, because these walls, they're still paper. So see, I can bend that out if I wanted it to be closer to the rooftop edge. So now we have these back 3 tabs. Why are there 3 tabs instead of 4? Well, you'll see when you see it on the die, there wasn't room for another one. It's really not necessary. So I'm just going to use these 3 tabs. What I'm going to do for these is I'm just going to kind of bend them up slightly, so I make sure that when I add glue and I fold this down, they're going to make immediate contact. All right? So I'm just going to go in again with my glue gun, and I'm just going to lay that, just a little bit of glue, just place that there. Then I'm going to take this, close that up, and when I close that up, same thing, I'm going to go up inside that little dwelling, and I'm going to press on those tabs, kind of move that around. Hold that for just a second. Done. Roof on. That simple. It couldn't be easier, really. So next we have our dormer piece. The dormer piece, this is really a cool piece because it gives such dimension to this house, but it's kind of confusing because it has this pointed shape, and when I've made this several times, I immediately think, oh, that point, that's got to come out this way, right? Nope. The point goes into the roof. It's very, very strange, but that's where it goes. So what you do is same thing. I'm just going to kind of bend those tabs up just a little bit. I'm going to put glue on both of those tabs. Just a little bit of hot glue. That's what's great about that little detailer tip. Then I'm going to take this piece with that point going in. I'm going to slide it down the roof, and as if I'm pinching my nose, like if you're holding your breath, kind of pinch your nose, pinch that, and that's pinching it right onto those tabs. And in seconds, it's attached. It's that easy. It's pretty simple, right? So that is our structure. That's it. We've got our walls, we've got our roof, we've got the little dormer on, and then we can talk about the surface that it sits on. Now, the surface that it sits on, it is very delicate, very detailed. So on this deco sheet, I normally like to use the table kind of as my fold. I can see, I don't know if the camera's gonna pick this up, but you can see those score lines are there. You can see that through the cardstock. So it's much easier if I just press down on the table first, and that's going to kind of give me my initial bend, and then I'll just take my fingers and fold that down. Because there's just a little edge on there. See that? And it's got that great little kind of pinked edge. So just use the table, and when I do this, I just go and do all three, because the table is really going to give you enough pressure that it just kind of pops that crease in there. And then I just go with my fingers and fold this down. And again, this is just my index card with a piece of deco sheet over the top. And deco sheet, it's adhesive, back vinyl, it's gold and silver in the pack. This could be alcohol inked, which I'll talk about in another video about altering these. And then we have these little tabs. I'm just bending all of those. Now let's put this together. Now these little tabs, they're going to tuck under here to make that little ledge. And sometimes when you do this, hot glue to me is the easiest, but you have to just be careful with this because you have such a small contact area. And when you squeeze that, the hot glue does ooze out. It's not going to burn you. It's probably just going to startle you more than anything, but a quick little pinch on there and that is connected. And that's really why I like to use hot glue for this, because it's just quicker. Otherwise, I'd be sitting there holding, waiting for, even that quick dry glue to dry. And I'm not that concerned about these corners. I really am not. And I'm just taking that excess glue, I'm kind of squeezing it and rolling it off my fingers. And I'll just keep folding this down and go all the way around. It's really simple. But it's cool. I mean, it was important for me to kind of show in a video, because I know that sometimes if you just read instructions or you look at something, you think, oh my gosh, that would take me forever to put together. It really doesn't. As long as you have everything prepped, and if you're gonna make several of these, I suggest doing everything almost kind of assembly line style. Get all your pieces cut, get everything sanded and inked, and then just sit down with your glue gun and off you go. So there's our base. It's that simple, and you can fold all those pieces down. We've got our base. It's got that great little ledge, and our dwelling sits right on top. And that dwelling can go anywhere. It can go in the center, off to the side, wherever you want to set that. So we've got these pieces. These are our structure pieces. All right, so because I'm done with the structure, I'm done with this. Now I'm gonna work strictly with cardstock, because these are our paper pieces. These are the pieces that are just gonna accent on top of this. And I know that doesn't have a lot of personality right now because it's not inked and distressed, but you're getting the idea of building it. So here's what we have first. We've got our chimney. Now our chimney piece is, it already has the score lines, but because it's in this gray cardstock, you're not gonna see it probably on camera much, but I'm just gonna go in and fold it on those crease rule right there. We've got those lines, and that's going to make kind of this little box, and it's got these tabs here that also fold down. And this is what's going to make our chimney. So all I need to do is put a little bit of glue on that one small tab. So I'm gonna go in with my quick dry glue. I'm just gonna use a little bit of that. I mean, if you have not used this before, it's ridiculous glue when it comes to paper. It's very quick, but it's also, for small things like this, if you're messy glue and it oozes out, it doesn't leave any shine. So that's kind of my favorite thing about it. So on this, I just kind of flatten that out because I am just gonna make a little box. You see that? And then it has these two tabs that I folded in, and that's it for the chimney. And how you attach the chimney is pretty simple. You're just gonna take glue. You can use hot glue for this step if you want, but you can also just use the liquid. I'm just gonna put that on those tabs. You're gonna take your roof, decide where you wanna put your chimney, and you're just going to just plop it down. So you could press that down anywhere you want, and you're gonna hold this. So when I do a structure like this, I would normally do hot glue, because anything that requires me to hold more than 5 seconds, I've lost interest. And so I would just use hot glue for that to get that to sit. But we'll wait just a second, see if that grabs on there. Does all right. That's pretty good in there. Okay, so next we'll talk about the porch piece. And of course, with any of these, when you're building this, any part is optional. If you don't want to put a porch on anything, you don't have to. But what this is, I'm just going to go in and fold on all of those crease rule lines. You'll see that it has a really interesting shape to it. It's got kind of this little tapered edge, and then it's got this front part with the tabs and these little slots. I don't know if the camera will pick that up, but there's a little slot on each side, not necessarily a notch where you feed it in, but it's actually cut in on each side. And that is for these little guys. And I'll show you in another video that you can sub something. If you don't want to use paper for the post, you want something a little bit more robust, we can do that, but that'll be another video. I'll show you how to use these paper pieces. Here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna turn this over on the inside, and inside that straight area there, I'm gonna put a dot of glue on each end. Okay, you see that? Then I'm going to take the paper, and it doesn't really matter. They're kind of angled on each side, but there's no top or bottom for that. But I am going to put color side out. So I'm looking at the craft side on both of these, and I'm going to slide it under there just so the tip of that paper does not extend past that step. I'm just going to slide it into that notch, and I'm going to give it just a little press. And I want to make sure that this little stick is running parallel to the edge of that. And I'll do the same thing on the other side. So I'm just kind of sliding that into that little slot, making sure that that doesn't stick out past the step. Give it just a little press, just to kind of get out that excess glue. And that's what we have. So see that? We've attached both of our paper posts to the step. Pretty simple. Now we've got these two little side tabs. You see that? We're going to put glue on those. This one I'm just going to do one at a time, just because I need to hold it a little bit longer. And again, if you're hot glue all the way, there's nothing wrong with, if you're like, well, why didn't you just use hot glue for this? You can, but because it's really small, I tend to burn myself on these. So I just use something like this. This works really well on paper. So I'm just gonna hold that for a second, get that to grab. And that's going to be just the front part of the porch step. And we're gonna do the same thing to the other side. So just use a little dot of glue there. And that might not be enough. Let me use a little bit more. There we go. Too much. All right, I'll tuck this under. And I'm just gonna hold this there. So this is going to be our porch, and the porch you can make out of so many different things. My gosh, you could have something alcohol inked, or you can use your embossing folders on this, or you could use stencils, you could do anything you want. But that's pretty much the structure of the porch. We've created the step, it's got those two posts, and we've got this one angled tab that's going to go into the house. So that's how we made our front porch. So all we have to do now is our door. This is the color of our door. I just happen to just use brown, putting on some glue. Gonna take the house, gonna line that right up there, give it a little squeeze right there. So now my front door is a different color, and I'm going to attach this. So here's how I attach this front porch. I'm gonna go back to my glue gun, and what I wanna do, and it's gonna be really hard because I don't wanna move the camera to get the angle, but here's what I'm gonna do. I have the house sitting on the table. I'm gonna set this on the table. I'm gonna put just hot glue on this one tab, and I'm gonna slide it right under the door. So basically what I'm doing is, if this is on the table, I'm sliding this down so it sits right under that door. Everyone see that? But using the table as your level, it's gonna make sure that everything lines up just fine. So that's what I'm doing. I'm gonna take a little bit of hot glue, just gonna put it on that one tab. I'm going to take that, I'm going to slide it right under there, press it under the door. I'm just going to hold it onto the house for a second, pick it up, just press that tab in. See that one tab? And it's right under the door. And now we have these little paper posts. And this is where it gets a little wonky, because at the end of the day, it's just paper. So what you're going to do is you're just going to determine based on the height of this. You can see how these kind of stick up past the roof line of the dormer. You just give them a little kind of angled fold, a little twisted fold. Because depending on how high you glued these, that's going to determine how far down you need to fold it. And all you're going to do is, see that little fold I did? There's a tiny little fold right there. I'm just going to put glue, and it's just going to sit right under that roof. So if you want these to be a little straighter, well, fold it down a little further so it can touch a lower part of your roof line. I like the fact that they're wonky, but I know that some people, it just drives them crazy. So I'm just gonna go in with, again, some glue. Just gonna add a little bit of glue onto the end of that. I'm gonna press that under there. And usually I'll let the paper, kind of the pressure of the paper, grab on wherever it's gonna grab on to the underside of that dormer. Just kind of set it there. But that's it, really, done. You are finished assembling this. So we've got this, we've got our base, and now you've created the structure, the dwelling. And now from here, the possibilities are endless. So be sure to check out my other videos where I really go into detail about how we can customize this dwelling.